Sounds good.
And yep. All right, you're good to go.
Okay.
Great.
Okay, go ahead, Rach.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're really excited to share what we know and to hear what your thoughts are on this topic. So I'm Rachel Kraushaar. I'm an associate professor of English at SUNY Rockland Community College. And in teaching English, I have a lot to say, I guess, about reading, but I'm excited to have Talia here to complement that conversation with some facts about OER and how this all connects. So Talia, go ahead and introduce
Hi,
yourself.
how are you, everyone? Oh, I just stumbled on my words there. I'm an associate professor of communication at Rockland Community College as well. I'm also the OER lead, so I know some of you through my role there. In a couple of slides, I'll let you know how we kind of got together with this idea for matching OER and digital reading, because Rachel was doing some great research in that area, and I was working with the OER. And also, I have to mention, Rachel is also on our college OER committee. So that is how we were connecting in other ways as well. So let's get started.
Okay, so we're going to first ask you to define reading as it relates to your discipline. But before you go ahead and answer that, and Talia will steer you in the direction of how we'd like to see those responses. How I started looking into this question of reading in a digital platform is obviously it's inherent in my discipline, teaching freshman comp and teaching reading and writing, to think about reading strategies and our students' reading levels in the college level. And my first discovery was we are taught to teach writing as a process. But it occurred to me, no one's teaching our students reading as a process, and reading at the college level is a pretty dramatic shift for many of our students from reading from K through 12. And so I first focused on what does it mean to be a college level academic reader, and trying to have more overt conversations with the students and model my own reading for them so that they could see what active reading strategies look and feel like and sound like. And then as we started to get on board the OER train, and I have to say our school is really doing a great job with that, I think. It occurred to me, wait, I like holding a book. I do all my annotating in my texts. I print everything. And how am I now assigning all these digital texts, asking students to go on their merry way and read in that mode? And yet I'm having my own bias about how I prefer to do my academic reading and annotating. So to move that conversation along, what does it mean to read in all of the disciplines? Because reading is not necessarily the same move for our students in, reading a fiction piece as it is for reading nonfiction, as it is to reading a scientific article, a math formula, etc. So we started to have some interdisciplinary conversations about this. So first question to you is, how do you define reading as it relates to your discipline?
And please, in the chat box, if you would put in your discipline and then how you define reading, so that this way we can parse that out. So if you would all share your responses.
They're putting them in the chat box, right?
Yep. We should have had some music ready.
I know.
Some music. I can provide that, but I don't think you all want to hear me sing this early. Actually, Rachel, you're the singer, so. All right.
Jeopardy. You could put on the Jeopardy music.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Okay. So Amanda, communication, public speaking. So that's where in my space, Amanda. Business reading to comprehend and act, as in case study, theoretical underpinnings. Yep. Business, computer, making meaning with text, data, and media. English, okay. Reading, multimedia literacy. Literacy education, usually the most difficulty I see for students in reading and deciphering research. Okay, Beth is nursing. Many students struggle with reading for knowledge. Serena is talking about comprehension. Christina, digital literacy. ESL, top-down and bottom-up strategies. Okay, Nancy Rosen, side chapters in OER. For articles for social media and communication, computer science, communication studies. Oh, okay, hold on. Hospitality. Reading is important. Writing is at the beginning with reading. So it's so interesting because when Rachel started the training with us for our grant, she posed the same question to the first cohort of faculty who are training students. And we were all just blown away because when is the last time you thought about reading as it relates to your discipline? And we were so grateful to kick off this conversation about it because I always assigned reading and I read myself, but did I really even think about it? So it was very interesting to just start off that conversation, and we were very grateful for it. So now we are going to continue, and we are going to ask you to either join, use the QR code or go on mentimeter.com. There's the code. And you'll see that you can have a few areas where you can add some words or even a few words at a time for a phrase. What do you see as the benefits of reading digital texts? So if you could go on there and it will create a word cloud, which I will share with you. So what do you all see is the benefits of reading digital texts? And when I give you a few minutes to do this, a minute or two to do this, I will toggle over to the Mentimeter, which is, we were trying to figure out how to embed it in this slide, but it wasn't quite working when we were going through the presentation. So I'm going to go over to that app on its standalone.
While they're doing that, I just want to point out, Talia, someone in a business computer apps class mentioned making meaning with text, data, and media. And I like someone else used the word deciphering text, that students have trouble deciphering text. So it's interesting to see even the vocabulary that we're using to describe reading across disciplinarity.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share of this. I hope everyone got the code so I can go into the other one.
Would it be okay if I just added a quick reading related anecdote while everybody's doing their Mentimeter?
Absolutely.
I don't know if you have this where you are, but we have something called Silent Book Club, which is everybody meets in a town in a coffee shop and you bring your own book. And it was interesting to see who had a digital reader and who had a book from the library, and who preferred to read in which format, who switched it up, who's reading for work in a book, but reading for leisure on the digital. I don't know if you've come across that with your colleagues at work, but it was interesting to see that just last night.
We're going to get to that.
Awesome.
Thanks for that.
I've seen like silent discos, like with
Oh.
I've never seen
I like
this.
that. We're gonna have to talk. It was written up in our local paper Newsday, and so different towns on Long Island have them. And the idea is that if you're a little introverted, you bring your book and you kind of have something to automatically talk about with a stranger sitting next to you. And so you could chat for half an hour, and then there's an hour devoted just to reading your own book. And then you can leave at the end or chat about your book. And it's really kind of fun.
That's great. Well, here are all your responses. So the benefits of reading digital text. So for those of you who don't know about word clouds, so the bigger the word, the more responses went to that word, so the more of you chose that word. So accessible, accessibility, cost-effective, ease, access, cheap, portability, size, format. So as you can see, earth-friendly. Okay, so the next one, You can stay, and what do you see as challenges? Okay, I think I have to stop it. What do you see as challenges you encounter when reading digital texts? Let's see what comes up. Usually I like to show it at the end, but I don't want to waste time toggling back and forth, so we'll just leave it on. All right, so the biggest word is distractions. Absolutely, social media. Distractions keeps getting bigger. Device type, size of the device, accessibility, screen strain, staying focused, right? So a lot.
Sorry, review later. I wonder if that means like it's something you kind of you glance at and then think, oh, I'll get to that more in depth later.
Review later. So if somebody wants to share what that means, that's interesting. That's how I would read it too, Rachel.
That's
All right,
not mine, but I would agree that sometimes when you tell students like the reading is on Blackboard, they kind of get this feeling of like, I'll check it, and then they forget it. Whereas if you hand them a physical copy and say, please read this, now it's like an object that reminds them to do it. So that wasn't my submission, but that's when I saw that, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, it's like concrete, right? Like you're handing something, an article, a book, it's concrete, you're holding it. You can't get away from that. It's in your face. So
Oh, and that's funny. I was thinking of it from my end. When I see great articles that I get emailed digitally to me digitally, I'll be like, I'll keep them in the inbox saying, oh, I'm going to get to that. And I review my inbox and, I have articles from a year ago that are still in the inbox.
So here we go. A lot of these relate, I mean, distractions is the largest word, but a lot of the other words and phrases relate to being distracted, right? Multiple documents, staying focused. So interesting. So when part of our grant that we received is to do a research project and also to do digital coaching, reading coaching with our students. So I'm going to share with you what my students said about those same questions. Okay, so now I have to go back. Again, apologies that I am toggling back and forth here. Here we go.
Yeah, Beth, we're going to get to what the research says on that too.
Okay, so here are what the students said. Benefits, accessible, information, convenient, speed, portable, can make font bigger, save paper. I know one of you said earth friendly, easy to save info, focus better, unlimited visual pics. So a lot of similar answers. Our students also look at that word right there in the middle. We've all had distractions. So we're not very far off with our students as to what the challenges are of digital reading, right? Hard on the eyes, screen headache, overstimulated. So again, a lot of these words and phrases do, contribute to the distracting. Lack of motivation, too much info, other apps can distract. So this is where the aha moment came up. I was working on a previous grant to convert high enrolled written and oral communication courses to OER. We were using Lumen, and Rachel was doing some great digital reading research on, not related to that particular grant. So when we were thinking of the next big impact project we could have, that's where we're at Rockland. We want to have bigger impact projects. So I had this aha moment. So even though we all know the O in OER is for open, most people think it's online, right? A lot of people think it's online. I shouldn't say most. They think it's all the information is online, and it's not necessarily true, but it is, right? I mean, most of our OER is online, and especially listening to the AI presentations yesterday, it will just continue to grow in that direction. So that's the aha moment where we married the two ideas of digital reading training and coaching with the OER project. So I am going to hand it over to Rachel. Rachel, do you want me to stop my share so you can stop, or do you want me to just advance the slide? If you say, tell me to advance it, it's up to you.
That's fine. If you want to just stay on the sharing and I'll go. Oh, no, yeah, actually share with me because I have fly-ins.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. So are we good?
Yep.
And then, okay. So, I noticed, I lost the name. Was it Beth Harvey? Mentioned some really interesting, points that I think many of us agree with about needing to take, the relationship with comprehension and note-taking and retention when reading digitally. So I want to give you some of the research findings about the differences between digital and print reading. So let's start with digital. As many of you mentioned, we are more likely to skim quickly, do shallow reading. We have a tendency to go in and search for keywords. We do a lot of browsing and scanning, and someone had put the word scanning and skimming in the Menti. Keyword spotting. So even if we are starting to do the reading, we'll be looking for those just keywords. We're more likely to read one time in a digital realm. Read for a main idea. We're seeking out the nuts and bolts. Layouts will vary, which is something we need to think about for our students as well in the digital presentation. It's a nonlinear reading. In a digital, we bounce around a lot. And as mentioned before, it's not concrete. It's a more intangible mode of reading. Whereas with print text, we're more likely to read more slowly. We'll read more deeply. We concentrate more. There's that focus thing. We'll do more deep reading. We're more likely to do more deep reading. We're more likely to go back in a few times and do multiple readings in print. We notice more details. We are more likely to have a consistent layout. We know for the most part, we know what we can anticipate visually and layout wise in a print text as opposed to the digital mode. And again, it's a more linear read. We're more likely to read straight through and linearly, whereas the digital we mentioned is nonlinear. And print text, something almost everyone we've spoken to, students and faculty alike, have agreed that they like to just hold a text. And it's interesting because I noticed someone wrote scent. I've had people also respond that they like the smell of a book. So I guess our sensory, our senses get more engaged with the print text in that respect. Okay. And then there's still more. With digital, we have that benefit of being able to read in the dark. But along with that comes eye strain and some eye burn. It is easy to find information quickly in the digital world. We save paper, which is definitely something climate-wise and environmentally makes sense. We can multitask while reading. Take that for what you want. Some of us thrive on multitasking, but if we think about when our students are reading, do we want them multitasking? Use fewer study strategies when in the digital realm. For example, note-taking. And we're stronger at concrete information on a digital platform. With print text, you have a better sense of where you are in a book, and that would, of course, relate to that distraction and focus problem. It's easier on the eyes, and we're more likely to have retention in a print realm. If you have to print out, it can get costly. We're more likely to do one task at a time in print as opposed to multitasking in the digital realm. We will highlight, annotate, and ask questions with a print text. I'm not sure, having taught comp for over 30 years and lit classes, I'm not sure that our students are all doing that even in a print text. So that's something to bear in mind. And we're stronger at abstract information and inferential inferential reasoning when reading print texts. Okay, so I know that one of our main concerns is reading comprehension and that deciphering thing that was mentioned in the chat box. And so it was mentioned before about the different ways that people showed up at that Long Island event, right? Some people had e-text, some people had their hard copy texts. So when we talk about reading on e-texts versus print texts, the reading comprehension research there's so many conflicting and disparate research studies and results. So one of the findings was that, and this one is glaring, that in a study on the relationship between leisure digital reading habits and text comprehension, it says suggests that, so I would keep that in mind too. Comprehension is 6 to 8 times better with physical books than e-readers. Now, another study, a more recent one, actually found that this might come down to a skill set. So that take away the digital versus print factor, and are we really just looking at a question of skilled and less skilled comprehenders to begin with? So our students who are already less skilled in reading in general, even in print, might account for those skill levels might account for the disparities we see in studies on digital reading. And reading strategies, if they lacked the reading strategies, that study and several other studies found that it came down to just lacking reading strategies in general. Metacognition. So what is metacognition? It's that ability to self-monitor, right? Having this self-awareness. And a couple of studies looked into, okay, what's the effect on metacognitive learning regulation? And one of the studies found that there was no difference in metacognitive learning regulation between print and digital texts. And there are now a plethora of research studies looking at, okay, how can digital tools while we're reading, how can it employing digital tools simultaneously with reading digital texts maybe ameliorate or mitigate some of these gaps in stronger metacognition and regulating our reading as we do the online reading. And they found that those digital tools can really make a difference. So the studies, as I said, they're all over the place. They really are. Like you can cherry pick studies to defend your argument that we are killing reading by making our students read online, and you can cherry pick articles that can defend why we should absolutely embrace and lean into digital reading as a mode. Overall, there are other factors to consider. There were studies on gender differences. The one study found that boys actually gravitated and succeeded better in digital reading, and found more confidence with their reading than girls. Socioeconomic factors have been studied. And as we mentioned, reading skill level. So what does this mean for us though? As we saw, our students come with perceptions of digital reading and print reading. We come with perceptions of digital reading and print reading, and we come with biases, right? Let's just take a second to think about, and that whole mitigating bias conversation. Do we come with our own biases about digital reading? Is there a fear factor? Is there a transition factor that maybe we need to know how to make the transition, right? So the other thing is familiarity. We're familiar with the text, but we assume that our students are familiar with digital platforms. And clearly from what we saw from Talia's students' comments, we need to maybe check that assumption that our students prefer technology and that they're adept with technology. And so that means that they prefer to read digitally. So maybe some of our own biases and their biases are interfering with engagement in the digital reading. And maybe we can do a better job of encouraging the digital reading while giving them the strategies and skills to do it more effectively.
And,
So,
and,
oh,
piggy- and
yeah.
piggybacking off of that comment, Rachel, this was from our last grant, when you remember I was telling you all that we were converting the English and speech class to, oh no, I think you want me to share?
No, go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. When we were converting the high enrolled English and speech classes. So this was one of the surveys we gave the students. This was one of the questions that we gave the students. So when I'm assigned educational work-related materials, I prefer to read and look at that response, right? In hard copy print. But what I should have added on this one is that another question was for, I believe, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly, but along the lines of when assigned textbooks in school, no matter what I prefer, I would rather it be, the majority of them wanted it free. So they wanted OER, they wanted it free. So even though they prefer reading the print, they will go for the cost savings, right? So it doesn't matter. So even if the given two, so both were free, 66.7% of them would have grabbed that hard textbook. But if one was $150 textbook and the OER online was free, they go to the free. So now, I mean, we are a community college. We have, a lot of different students coming from various backgrounds. I don't know if that is, I'm sure that's a factor, as opposed to perhaps a school where cost is not as such a big thought in their mind. We have a lot of students who need to pay their electric bill and they're working 3 jobs. So of course that is going to, impact their decision. But I thought that was very telling. And then, related to what Rachel was saying.
Yeah. Some of the research we've gotten to do with our students directly has been, quite frankly, kind of mind-blowing. I just want to go to the comments for a second,
Yeah.
Talia. Serena asked, have researchers studied this in younger people? Are we just trained in printed books? So 2 questions to unpack. Number 1, yes, actually, a bulk of the studies are in younger people. And as far as, are we just trained in printed books? Serena, do you mean we, the professors? And so that's why we might have this bias too, that we're trained in printed books. And so we don't think to make the leap to, we're not even yet sure of the strategies for reading digitally. I'm guessing that's what you mean, Serena. Most of us in this room grew up, right. We grew up, right. The familiarity of that. Not only did most of us grow up that way, but if you're like me, our college and our grad school years, you know, for the most part were also, I'm going to argue, in print. We did our academic scholarship in print text, a lot of us probably. So we don't even necessarily know how to be scholars in the digital realm as students, from a student standpoint, right? And then also I want to point to Beth Heavey.
Yeah, I love that what Beth wrote, actually. I think that's
And yeah, and I want to point out, Beth, that like you, I have two children myself, my own children. One was an honors student, voracious reader, and the other is has learning disabilities, extreme ADHD. So you want to talk about the focus, and the reading logs that he used to have to write for school would become knockdown, drag out fights. And that's actually how I came to study all of this, because he would beg me for Audible. And I would say, that's not reading. Because I'm an English professor. You're not reading if you're listening. And then he taught me that in Audible, he was able to listen and he would read along. Just as you mentioned, Beth, why do we have to make it a binary? We don't. And some of the strategies we're going to get to actually show a really beautiful merging of both realms, right? So these are great points. And also, I really want to emphasize, and Talia will agree, that we're not just talking about accessibility and equity from a socioeconomic standpoint. We both have done a lot of disability studies and are major advocates for students with learning differences and disabilities. And so we are excited about all of this, because the prospect of making this reading more accessible, and reading strategies and academic success more open to all kinds of learners.
Absolutely. And we should also note that we do have print copies of many of the OER texts in our library, but again, it comes to if more than one student want it, we don't have that many. So fortunately or unfortunately, most of the students do access the material digitally. So that's where our focus is. But 100%, Beth, I agree that you know, having both options for many of our students would be a wonderful benefit. And reading while listening is highly effective strategy for ESL. Absolutely. My mom was an ESL student. She was an English language learner, and I remember as a child, I was 5 years old when she went to college in this country, and I remember her reading out loud all the time. And that's how she said she was able to, you know, grasp the material. So
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
comments. Thank you for sharing,
Yeah,
everyone.
these comments are really in line with what we've found about our colleagues and our students.
Yes. And the OER texts are definitely, there's a lot more options. They're not so cost prohibitive. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and what these comments reveal is that some of you are open to, and I imagine all of you are, because you're here for this presentation. Is it a question then of changing mindsets and habits to change the outcomes of how we and our students comprehend, self-regulate, remember, retain reading in a digital realm? And as Talia already established, and as many of you know, digital text and OER, they're integral to academic and professional environments, and they are not going away. They're playing an increasingly prominent role in the future of our school and SUNY and higher education and the world. I mean, and business. So we're here to talk about the ways that we can mitigate these gaps in comprehension, these issues with focus, and this struggle to engage with digital texts. And we're in a great position pedagogically and as mediators between these strategies and implementing them, and for our students to transform field. So how do we utilize and encourage strategies for reading digital texts and help our students engage as deeply, thoughtfully, and effectively as they believe they can with print text? I want to pause here because my question has this inherent humanities bent to it. And what I've learned already from the grant work we're doing with our interdisciplinary colleagues is I'm so focused on deep and active reading strategies because of my field. It's something that's imperative there. But, you know, our math colleague pointed out, other than the word problems in math, really deep reading isn't necessarily a goal in those courses and for that curriculum. So it's not necessarily always about deep reading, but deep reading does include that active reading. And that is great anywhere, right? So Talia, do you need me to turn this over?
I do, please. Okay, so before Rachel and I go into a deeper dive into some strategies, I would like you to do the next Mentimeter. You should still be on it. Okay, oops. All right, so if you can go to the next Mentimeter, and what are some strategies you use for digital reading? Okay, if anyone needs the code again, let me know. I could pull it up, but I assume you already all have it.
Do you know you're not sharing your screen yet, right?
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
you know. Okay. Okay, so what are some strategies that you all use when reading digital texts? Okay, highlighting, minimizing distraction. Questions geared to text, okay. Increase font size, that's one of my favorites. Scroll versus reading, minimize distractions, okay. Dictionary sometimes. That's the thing I miss most about when I'm reading a hard copy print book. I miss that, just being able to highlight and look up a word. So a lot of highlighting, bookmarking, airplane mode, print it out. Oh boy, we learned that one when just to give you guys while you folks are all adding to the word cloud, the way we are setting up this initiative is Rachel is training 4 faculty members who are all in different disciplines, and then we are turning around and then we are giving this digital reading coaching with our students. So it's a kind of an ongoing a full semester initiative. And then next semester, the 4 of us will also be training other faculty in 4 other disciplines. So that's how we are that's why we wanted to make a higher impact across the disciplines. So that is the strategy. So a lot of these things I'm learning, with Rachel, and it's wonderful. Talk about metacognitive and really thinking about it. All right, so dictionary, thesaurus dictionary printed out, great. So now let me share with you what the students said, because that's always fun. Okay, let me get this up. So. Okay, so our students also note-taking, reading important words, highlighting, using the dictionary, turning off notifications, use easy translation, blue light glasses, turning on the captions. So once again, we are not far off from our students. So that's also what we thought was really cool, that even though we are the educators and they are the students, we really don't have too many differences between the way that we access this digital information and the way that we use our strategies. And we were a little bit blown away by that. Wow, we're not too far apart at all, but practically we're more similar than we're not. So as we go on I'm going to have Rachel continue with the suggested teaching strategies. One of the asks I had for Rachel last week was, okay, I want to start getting my students on the actual strategies. And she gave me a great, note-taking strategy, because the research has shown, and Rachel has shared, that the research has shown that note-taking is one of the most highly effective ways of improving attention, reading comprehension, and memory of this digital text. So I've given that as an assignment to my students, and I've already gotten feedback that it's a game changer. So the Cornell note-taking strategy, which is great. So I remember doing that in University of Buffalo way back when. I remember I was taught that strategy. So it is worth it. What I'm thinking for myself is that I never thought to do a deeper dive into taking my students along and saying, hey, here is the free OER text. I just give them the links. I say, here are the pages, here are the chapters, go for it. I never took the time to say, well, how are you doing with this information? How are you taking notes? How are you highlighting? What are you doing? And I never really took the time to do that. I just made these assumptions. And now when I took the time, and it is difficult, you have to take class time to do this. I get it. I'm always struggling to, shove 5 pounds of flour in a 4-pound sack when it comes to the content of our classes, but it's absolutely worth it. I find it's absolutely worth it, because I'm getting feedback from my students that they are really able to access and understand this information, and they're taking their time, they're doing a deeper dive into it because of this system. So I just wanted to give you my personal anecdote. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, Rachel, so you can take over.
Some hot off the presses news for me too. I'm glad I didn't get to hear the feedback on how it went with the Cornell notes, so that's cool.
Yes.
That's great to hear. I also want to point out that Amanda and Terry mentioned that actually one of the features they enjoy about online reading, and I feel the same, is you can do the right click for a definition and for synonyms. And I tell my students, ask Siri. Because I know they get comfy, they're sitting there, they don't want to get up and and look something up. I said, just ask Siri for the definition, Okay.
And Terry and Amanda, I do the same thing. And I'll admit it here, don't tell anyone. I've tapped on, I'm like, wait a minute. So that's how ingrained digital text reading is to us now.
Yeah. So we gave you the research, we gave you the background, we asked you to weigh in, we've shown you what Talia's students have had to say on the matter. What can we do? How do I take this and apply it in my own reading and in my classroom? We're going to give you some of those strategies. But first, want to talk metacognition, we need to engage in some of our own metacognition about number one, what are the goals of the reading you're assigning? Do you even know what you're assigning, why you're assigning, what you want the students to glean from what you're assigning? So what are the goals of the reading you're assigning is a question I'd suggest thinking about. Who are the readers in your classes? Now, this is an important question, because when I first started teaching the honor students at the previous college I was at, I just assumed they were honor students. They were all strong readers. And I quickly came to find out that they were honor students. Many of them were STEM focused honor students. So while they were doing amazing in their science and math classes, writing and reading were not only challenges, but they had kind of shut down on those and had really strong mindsets and perspectives about reading literature, about doing writing. So who are the readers in your classes? What skill sets are they coming with? What are their own attitudes about reading in general? What does active reading and learning look or feel like for you? What is it? So start there. How do you know when you've done a meaningful, deep, active read of your own? And then ask yourself, okay, how does that look when our students do it? What are the print reading strategies students should know for academia? And so I feel like we've almost jumped over an entirely other important conversation that didn't happen enough in the first place, which is reading strategies for print across the disciplines. And then how can we teach students to transfer those print strategies, those successful print reading strategies, to this online realm, to digital reading? Okay, let's start with three main reading habits that we can ourselves start to employ, and it might be already, and start modeling for our students across these new platforms. One, streamlining. Somebody mentioned that they go in airplane mode. I love that. I never even thought of airplane mode. You know, do not disturb maybe, but airplane mode, amazing. Because what are some of the main distractions for us to focus when reading digitally? All those other windows, the emails popping up, the websites. So maybe talking about time management, someone mentioned, and that is a big piece of this time management. Reading is time laborious. It is. And when our students are put to the question of, well, I can either read this article or I can, do 3 lab reports for bio in the same amount of time, I understand why they're resisting doing the reading. But we can teach them how to do more time economically sound reading by showing them ways to keep those distractions at bay. Don't go for the hyperlinks immediately in the first read. That's another wonderful strategy. Come back to them, right? Because you know how they have the embedded hyperlinks to other research articles or to definitions or other sources. Ignore those hyperlinks on a first read, okay? Because those are detours. Noting, most long digital text formats include annotation and collaboration tools. Even if they don't, I'm going to give you a list, we're going to give you an exhaustive list of so many amazing digital tools and apps that can be used for annotating and for doing collaborative annotating as a class. And that can help a lot. Building stamina. This is a struggle to begin with our student readers, especially in digital text. It's important to use that time management skill, not just for getting the reading done, but for also learning to embed breaks when doing that reading. I say to my students, this is a longer text. I suggest 20 minutes a day for 5 days, or take 10 minutes 3 times a day. So I'll even suggest how to break those readings up, or I'll assign them broken up. Okay, so what are our active reading strategies? First of all, I got a lot of pushback from my peer colleagues when I was doing my grad school work, suggesting this, and there are many colleagues and students who will feel like, what are we in romper room? You're reading aloud in college? I can't emphasize enough to you how my students have embraced and loved when I read a text aloud with them. You can read it aloud. You can do a read around with the class. I always give the option to pass so they don't feel pressure to read aloud. I just say, okay, if you don't want to read, just say pass, we'll move on, no questions asked. But reading aloud or play an audio version aloud to the students. Encourage them to identify and look up words they don't know. I always say this is like being given a key to a door that behind it holds all these treasures, and you've decided not to use the key to open the door. That's what it's like every time you ignore a word that you don't understand, instead of looking it up and getting the definition so that you can put it into context with the text. Model how to highlight. As a student, once I learned about highlighters, I found myself highlighting the entire text by the time I was done. The whole thing was lit up like the sky in New York. I model how to highlight. They want to highlight. They just don't necessarily know what and how to highlight and when. Practice annotating with them and have them practice annotating in groups. Throw something into a Google Doc. Someone said, oh, I actually said I annotate in Google Doc. Throw something into a Google Doc or an annotation tool, hypothesis. Let them have at it in groups. They love it. They love this. Provide outline templates so that they can either for the reading they've done or for outlining the ideas that they've read for themselves. They love templates. They will fill those in. They love anything they can fill in. Teach them self-monitoring skills while they're reading. Teach them how to pose questions. We don't emphasize enough to students that asking questions doesn't show a vulnerability. It shows critical thinking skills. So model for them the questions that go through your head when you read a text. What do they mean by this? So model those asking questions, model stopping after every few sentences so they can summarize what they read before they move on, and assign note taking. Now I say especially on paper, because this is the one place where this whole digital rah-rah thing isn't flying. And according to the research, it's not flying. The evidence, and I'll show you some research on it, shows that note taking does even the playing field between these two modes, print and digital realms. However, hand annotating, hand note taking does make a big difference as opposed to digital. But digital note taking is great if that's the only option. Okay. Teach and model the annotating. Reactions, questions, definitions, main ideas, the connections you've made. Cornell Notes is a way that can be done. There's a great template online. I think Stanford University had it. Provide the students with a list of guiding questions so that they're not going into if you know that the goal of the reading is for them to be able to answer a certain set of questions, give them the questions ahead of time so that they have an anchor for the reading. Take time to go over the structure of the text if you know that the visual layout of your texts is something that they need orientation or context for. Graphic organizers are great. Tons of templates online for graphic organizers that they can use. They love doing this in groups as well. Embed interactivity into the digital text. Leave them space for notes. Give them questions that they can answer in the digital text. Again, suggesting the handwritten annotations. Take time as a class to evaluate the annotations. Because just having them do annotations, but not having conversations about what effective annotations look like or how they can make them more effective, just kind of leaves that like a paper bag, a plastic bag floating in the wind. Take time to look at student annotations together and say, here's what's working, here's what we could add.
And if I could just jump in for 1 second in the OER side, when students are developing and creating this content, that could also be part of an OER project. So, a lot of our goal is for for us to be partners in content creation. So that's a great opportunity to do that.
Yes, and for group work in the classes, cooperative learning. Okay, and again, I have to emphasize, note-taking does seem, according to the research, to really even the playing field. So if digital readers are taking notes on paper, a lot of those negative effects, and I don't love the word negative, but those negative effects of the internet access did get mitigated, did get reduced. So the allure of the multitasking while we and they read is really a large part of the obstacle we're looking at that we can overcome.
And if I can make a suggestion, for those of you who this might be new in terms of note taking and different types of note taking, perhaps consider an activity or an assignment where the note-taking, the process becomes part of the assessment, the grade assess. So, you know, maybe you can think about that to help those students gain access to that information as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, again, it comes down to expectations. I don't know if any of you have read Mike Rose's work, but Mike Rose, he's given some serious condemnations and critiques of the conventional K through 12 education system. And he writes in one of his pieces, students will float to the mark you set. And that has always stuck with me. Students will float to the mark you set. I think many of us already have that mark set as far as our expectations with other aspects, but we need to align our expectations of students doing effective reading across our disciplines. We've done it with writing a little more. We need to be doing it with reading as well. And just in the last few minutes, I'm just going to show you. So there are many note-taking apps. Some of them you might already be familiar with. Some of you you might already be using. I was actually surprised, you know, I did more recent research in preparation for today, that one of the most noted note-taking apps is Microsoft OneNote. And you know, we're forced into Microsoft, and I've been a little resistant actually, because I'm a Google Doxer, I'm a Google person, but Microsoft OneNote was mentioned in so many articles as a great tool, as one of the top tools for doing digital note taking. But again, there are all these other options. Audio recorded notes and dictation. So recording and dictating for notes, lots of software, a little harder to find free, but some are out there. There is Google Docs voice typing, which I don't use enough. Then there are text to speech apps for reading aloud. Lots of options. Another option, I know at my previous college, I worked with the students with learning challenges, and we would reach out to the recordings for the visually impaired, and they would sometimes supply those readings. More text to speech apps. You can ask Siri to even read. And then there are a lot of apps and for highlighting and annotating. Some of you are maybe familiar with Hypothesis, Kami. Students actually know some of these more than we do. And that's it. I'm done with my end.
We have 2 minutes for any questions. Thank you all for your participation and your engagement. And I'm looking forward to, Rachel and I are both looking forward to seeing how the students, how they feel about all of this digital reading coaching that we're giving. And we look forward to hopefully seeing some of you at CIT. The annotated, Rachel, I think somebody wants to share the annotating slide. We can share the PowerPoint.
Yep. And
yeah.
I'll be sending an email out to presenters at the end of the conference with information on how they can upload that, so then folks can access those resources afterwards.
And we talked about, we're going to make a handout for the slides. We're going to make a handout for the slides with all of the tools.
And we'll share that with you all.
Yep.
Sounds great.
And thanks for your comments. They're also fabulous.
Yeah, there was some great engagement in here today.
Yeah, and great ideas.
Right. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.